Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, Marcellus Shale, what's that all about? Plus leadership fights or leadership vacuums in the Pennsylvania General Assembly, something new there. Then how about this for a good topic? Has the national stimulus worked? Pennsylvania politics and government, in depth and in detail, and it all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, it wouldn't be Pennsylvania Newsmakers if we didn't deal with the goings-on in the state capitol. I want to get to there. We had a leadership resignation, and it's something you all should care about because it relates to how effective the Pennsylvania legislature is. Joining me are two of the state's leading reporters. Sitting across from me is Amy Worden, a frequent guest on the program from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Scott Detrow from Public Radio Capital News. That's pretty long, Scott.
Yeah, it is pretty long.
What do you say? Just say public radio?
Just say with public radio. That works
all right.
Usually.
Amy, you did a front-page story that appeared in the Philadelphia Inquirer this week, and it dealt with this issue of Marcellus Shale and revenues from Marcellus Shale. Explain.
Right. Well, Marcellus Shale is the natural gas reserve that runs over under three-quarters of the state. Its estimated value is billions, if not $1 trillion. So there's a lot of money in them.
Natural gas out of
it. Sorry. Yes. Right. So now that they've recognized that, they've developed drilling techniques to get to it.
Right.
There's been a gas rush, as they say. You know, a lot of companies coming to the state looking for the profits of gas. So the state now seeing that as a moneymaker, the governor and some in the legislature were proposing a tax on the natural gas, on the extraction of the natural gas. That ran into some major roadblocks, particularly in the Senate, Republican-controlled Senate. Although some Democrats also said, don't tax an industry in its infancy.
Yeah. Right now, it's a tax. Not right now. They kept
it's
saying,
barely gotten going. So let's give it a chance to to get going.
So the big news is that they on these public lands, right? Go ahead.
Right. So as part of the deal was there was also a push for let's expand the drilling in state lands and state forest lands. So that's what we had going on this week. There was a lease for the sale of I think it was tens of thousands of acres of
a lot more money than they thought.
Yes, got a lot more money than they thought. I think double. It was about 130 million.
Yeah, they were expecting 60. 128 comes in, so now all of a sudden a lot more. And proponents of a tax are saying, hey, that's a really good example of the fact that these companies are willing to shell out money to come drill here. They'd be able to afford the tax.
Right.
That's an issue we had.
And critics would say maybe they're here in such large numbers because there isn't any tax right now.
Right. And critics also say, hey, you shouldn't just tax people just because you can. That's not a good business policy. That, at a point when we're trying to lure companies in from all over the country with tax breaks and benefits, you're not going to get much business saying, hey, why don't you come here and we'll put a tax on you.
Right.
But go ahead.
And now the fight is on over possible expansion into more state land. That will be get a strong rise out of environmentalists who believe it can cause a lot of degradation and where the money is going to go.
Now, most of the politicians in the state, I mean, the environmental community, we've had both sides on this program debating this, and the concern, I guess, is you're drilled down vertically and then you go out horizontally with these new techniques, but it does produce some water contamination, a lot of water, and there's concern. Go ahead.
Right. It's a high-pressure water drilling problem, and, well, not problem, that's the process, but sometimes when things go wrong, when the cement that you're setting isn't set in time, there's cracks, you have leaks that get into the drinking water. Up in northeast Pennsylvania, there were a lot of issues the past year about contaminated wells. There was an explosion caused by gas that got out in one place in Dimock Township. So it's a real issue, and proponents of the tax, a lot of the environmentalists are saying, if you have it, you have to put the money from that into regulating this industry and cleaning up after.
But there isn't any doubt, Amy, you've been covering Harrisburg for a long time, that in Harrisburg, and particularly we're a big energy-producing state, producers are looking at this and saying, wow, we're an energy-producing state. This doesn't have the same effect as coal and other carbon emission
well, certainly
energy.
Cleaner. It's
go ahead, cleaner.
It's definitely considered
so, I mean,
cleaner.
What's the attitude in the legislature right now? The eyes are big. Go ahead.
Right. Well, governor's already said gas tax back on the table again this budget season. So
but also the expectation is that we will become a huge producer of natural gas
for decades and decades to come if this all goes well, if they can tap into all the gas that's there.
Wow.
And it's an issue in next year's race, too. This weekend we had all the Democratic candidates for governor in Harrisburg at the farm show. Most of them want to see a severance tax. Dan Honorado was the only one who was kind of saying, I don't know if it's the best time for that, saying the stuff you've heard from the Republican side in Harrisburg. But all the other Democratic candidates, all about a shale tax.
But we are going to have it. The question is, how much lands will be opened up and what will the tax ultimately be? Is that a fair summary?
Right.
I think definitely the land's going to be a top issue this year in terms of how much.
All right, let's turn our attention. I mean, it wouldn't be Pennsylvania politics, Amy Worden, if we didn't have something going on with the leadership. I can say that. You're a reporter. You can just give us the facts. The Speaker of the House now has said he will not seek re-election, Keith McCall from Carbon County. And in all of it, what a shock. How big a surprise was that?
Yeah, big surprise. Yeah, big surprise. He'd only just been elected Speaker a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, and now suddenly saying, I've had it. He served in the legislature 27 years.
Yeah.
He's got school-aged children. He wants to see them grow up. He's out of here. The timing was interesting to me. Why now? This sort of puts it, just as we're entering what's going to be a really difficult budget year again, he's saying, you know, he's on his way out. And so thus begins the jockeying.
Four speakers in 4 years, though. I got that right? Oh. That's unprecedented, by the way, in modern history. Go ahead.
I think when you asked around the Capitol, a lot of people said, hey, I wouldn't want that job. You've got so many headaches. You had to deal with a 101-day budget didn't pass. He had to corral the Democratic caucus.
That was tough.
You know, like the herding cats phrase about legislators. He was setting deals. He and Eachus were setting deals with the Senate Republicans, and the House Democratic caucus was not agreeing to those deals, so he had to go back. It didn't seem like a fun year.
All right, we're going to break. Can you believe this? The governor will give a budget address on February 9. Can we be starting this process again? We're going to hear from our two reporters on, guess what? Another Pennsylvania budget. Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Amy Worden and Scott Detrow, both reporters, are in the House chatting about a whole bunch of things related to Pennsylvania government and politics. What else on this program? All right, let's, Scott, let me start with you. Here we go. They literally finished the budget 2 weeks ago. I mean, to get the whole thing done. Now, 101 days, but they hadn't put it all together. And now the governor, in press conferences over the last couple of weeks, has been saying, uh-oh, here we go again. What's the governor, in effect, been saying about what he thinks the fiscal situation is in the state?
Right. People talk about the perpetual presidential campaign nationally. It's like perpetual budget cycle here in Pennsylvania. Well, we're already in the hole for next year, an estimated $450 million shortfall. Yesterday, Governor Rendell authorized $161 million in additional cuts for this year's budget. So we're talking about being in the hole already for next year. Like we were talking about before, we're going to have another discussion about a shale tax, but the concern people have is, you know, we tapped into a lot of one-time revenue sources last year, the rainy day fund, table games revenue. That's not there, so it seems to me like it's going to be a really straight issue of do we want to raise taxes or not, and of course both sides aren't going to agree on that.
Or Amy, as you know, we're back to a combination of raising taxes or cutting programs, right? I mean, there's not a lot of, but I mean, if you cover these press is the governor pessimistic? I mean, you know, he sets the tenor. We all agree there. They may do what the legislature can dispose, but the governor proposes and the tenor. What's the sense you're getting?
Yeah, well, he's saying we're going to have to talk about revenue generators,
Here
as
we
he
go.
says, taxes again this go round. So be prepared, people. But look what that got us last year. I mean, an extremely long budget impasse. We had a series of high noons, not just one. We had a bunch of them. Where the governor
101 days of them, right?
Well, actually, those sort of climactic points where the governor said, it's either this or the state employees are not going to get paid, or it's either this or we're going to lay off more people. Well, yeah, he was using the leverage that he had to get things done.
Yeah, what's fascinating about this, either one of you, is he's going to mention the infamous T word when the members of the legislature are up for re-election. He couldn't get it done in a year, no taxes. I mean, that is simply going to be a non-starter, I would think. I mean, that's going to be tough, isn't it, Scott, to get...
I wouldn't want to propose an income tax increase and then run for re-election. It's an interesting problem, and the meeting ended up getting canceled, but there was going to be a meeting with Governor Rendell and the various legislative leaders a couple of weeks ago. It was actually the day that we ended up passing last year's budget to talk about the budget. Everyone says that they're committed to getting the ball rolling, to get this done on time. But I think there might be a divide between, their ambitions of doing that and what happens when those divides start coming up.
So, Amy, as a reporter who's, covered a lot of these stories, I mean, you're not going to plan for a summer vacation. Right? You think seven budgets, do I got this right? 7 budgets, last 7 budgets, none of them passed on time. Of course, none of them quite like 101 days, agreed?
Right, correct, yeah.
But no one expects this, to be an easy process. And with the Speaker leaving, that could lend more instability to an already unstable process. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. And in addition, we have the departure of another key figure in Mario Severa, Representative Severa,
Appropriations Chair, Republican in the House.
Right, who's been around a while, and so now there's going to be a jockeying for his position just at a time when.
So we're jockeying for one of the appropriations chairs. We've got the Speaker of the House saying he won't seek re-election. We have a couple of experience.
We have a new Democratic whip.
We have a new leader. And then, Tom Corbett and potential charges against other. You get the final word, right?
At this point, there's all the other press conferences have been on Thursday, so there's this cycle that we all go through where we wait up at 8 o'clock in the morning, check our email to see if there's going to be a press conference. It's a constant thing that's hovering over the Capitol.
Now, hold on. As we tape this on a Thursday for all the weekend airings of this program around the state, no, you didn't get that email this morning.
No email this morning.
Did you get the email?
No.
But I checked like 6 times just to make sure.
I'm sure you did. All right, great update. All right, is the stimulus package working? Now, we're going to talk about that. What's it mean for Pennsylvania, and what's it mean for you? We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. All right, the question before the House is, has the stimulus worked? Pennsylvania's gotten, how much money? The $2.5 billion, more than that? Bob Latham?
At least, yeah. Right, for the highway side was about $1 billion.
$1 billion. All right, now, you notice I got into that. Sitting right here is Bob Latham. He's the Executive VP of Associated Pennsylvania Constructors, and next to him is Dave Patti, the President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Business. I just assumed everybody knows who you guys are. They do. All right. But look, before we get into the Pennsylvania picture, there's been a huge debate, David, I'll start with you, with this stimulus package. Right. I mean, some of it seems to have worked, and I think the roads and bridges, we want to get there, and a lot of it is pork. Let's be candid about it. Has that been part of the problem that we can't distinguish? Go ahead.
It was sold to the American people as roads, bridges, infrastructure, and the business community nationally signed off on that a year ago, saying, look, You know, it's reasonable to try and do something. We understand that politically the government feels like it has to react to a recession of this magnitude. And at least we'll have the capital projects done that we've desperately needed for the last 10, 20 years. So let's do that. And upstream, you know, it's not just about building the roads, but also you'll be making rebar and the aggregates, the concrete.
Right.
And
so
maybe
you'll find employment and
you'll get that, right. That money will trickle through the rest of the economy. Yeah. It'll do something.
But pork all over the place in it. That's
it
unrelated
a lot of
to
other
stimulus, both stimulus and long-term assistance for the infrastructure.
Right. As Bob can tell you, you know, the numbers were like 5%.
Yeah, go ahead,
Let's
Bob.
put it in perspective. It was a $780 billion program that was authorized on stimulus, and as Dave said, it was sold as an infrastructure program. Some $70 billion of that total went to infrastructure, but that was of all kinds.
Right.
But when it gets right down to the highway and bridge portion, which is where the sound bites and the photo ops were, that was about 27 or less than 5% of the whole program. So, you know, if you compare us against China's stimulus program, they have about a $700 billion stimulus program going on in China, all infrastructure, high-speed rail, highway infrastructure, water, things that put people to work and have long-term benefit to the entire community.
Particularly for the maintenance and the continued growth of a modern economy, right?
Absolutely.
That you'll still have 40 years from now. You'll still be using them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'm going to come back to you and talk about this Associated Press report, which I know you have some difficulty. Before I do this, look, during the 1930s, during the New Deal, one of the things that Franklin Roosevelt did is on the stimulus side, you know, or at least the side to get people work, they put people to work directly. I mean, they just said, you're out of work, here's some things. They were temporary, you know, not built in permanently into the economy. Wouldn't the government, David, you're a policy wonk. That's not a, you know, I can say that, I think, with, you would agree, you're a policy wonk. Is there would there have been anything wrong with doing the roads, bridges, and then saying, okay, we're going to stimulate, but we're going to take people who are actually out of work and give them something to do that benefits them and benefits...
Sure. Well, I mean, I think it would have been an interesting debate. I tend to be a little more of a supply side. Was it the private sector already had the firms out there that could do it, and they would hire those unemployed people. If they
That's fine. That's fine.
You know, so I don't
Whoever did it is fine.
I think a more efficient way would have been that way. Yeah. But yes, I mean, you know, one of the criticisms has been, well, you know, these townships and boroughs and even states didn't do new projects. What they did with the money was shifted money. Well, fine, but they shifted the money to pay for other government expenditures that, again, got into the private economy.
All right, we're going to run to a break.
Either way, putting the money in does create jobs.
Okay, well, we're going to run to a break. When I come back, I want to get into the Pennsylvania situation specifically, which you're the expert on. All right, Pennsylvania Newsmakers has the stimulus work. We're going to emphasize the roads and transportation element of it after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're talking about the stimulus. It's gotten very controversial. There was some, you know, a study recently produced by the Associated Press that said that the roads, bridges... Did it say all stimulus didn't work or just the roads and bridges part of it?
It said the infrastructure did not turn around the employment. The infrastructure spending did not turn around the employment of a certain area. Of course not.
Yeah,
I mean to say that you're going to put some money into one sector of the economy like construction and that's going to solve all of the unemployment numbers of an entire area is ludicrous. In Pennsylvania, for example, we calculate we created about 7,000 jobs with the money that came into PennDOT's program. Yeah. Now, these are people who would not have been working. They would have been on the unemployment rolls. They would have lost their health benefits. And so to say, well, that didn't turn around the half a million person unemployment in Pennsylvania, and so therefore it didn't work, we think is somewhat ludicrous.
Yeah. I think of it another way. what would have the Department of Community and Economic Development done, and the governor's action team, and members of the General Assembly, if someone said, hey, what would you be willing to do to get a factory to open up with 7,000 jobs in your district? They'd have fallen all over themselves to make that happen.
Yeah. And there's another point there. You know, the study that was done a few years ago, and you'll correct me if I got the details wrong, $1.7 billion a year needed for sustained road improvements. We have
actually just to maintain the system as it is.
And we have what, 25% of the bridges in some kind of structure. They're not falling down. They're not. You can, you know. Not, but go ahead.
Not trying to be hysterical, but they need to be fixed. You're right.
Yeah, they need to be fixed. So we don't have a way in this state to get to that kind of money, do we?
That's correct. And this is maybe the one place where we might have a little bit of an argument with this stimulus approach, because although we did create jobs, we did fix some bridges, and we did fix some roads, and that's all good. And I have to say that Pennsylvania's Department of Transportation did a marvelous job of getting that money from Washington to the street, so to speak. We don't have a long-term process. We don't have a long-term funding outlook. So PennDOT can't plan. We can't plan for improvements. We can't plan to address traffic congestion. We can't plan to make major projects going forward. And the construction companies now can't plan where they're going to be in the future. I mean, so we've got a lot of uncertainty going forward.
Didn't the original report say that we need sustained investment in the infrastructure?
Yes. I mean, year after year after year, we are always going to be $1.5 billion short on maintenance, because maintenance doesn't go away, and that's not adding capacity.
Yeah, the one problem with the stimulus approach, again, that we see is now we're looking at jobs bill, or stimulus 2 in Washington, and the Congress is talking about kicking the federal highway program reauthorization down the road another 18 months, leading to more uncertainty. Right now, we talk to Department of Transportation officials. They think their program is going to be off about a third from what it was under the stimulus. But now we've also got, are we going to toll I-80? We don't know. Is there going to be a jobs bill? We don't know.
So your point
is there going to be a reauthorization? We don't know.
So your point is
my point is, how do you plan anything under these circumstances?
That's right. There's no permanent, reason, what we call reasonably
There's no expectation of what we're going to have.
Funding stream out into the future.
That's correct.
I mean, and to run government, we often criticize for government not being efficient, but you can't be efficient if you can't plan. And to run government in a way that creates a competitive climate for businesses, we need to get raw materials in, products out. We need to have, you know, the water and sewer as well, and broadband. You know.
All right, we have 30 seconds left. When this stimulus, we still have not resolved the long-term funding stream for roads and bridges, correct?
Correct.
We're still dealing with this
I-80 both at the national level and at the state level.
Nobody's talking about leasing or selling the There's some people who would like to sell the turnpike, but we're not going to go there. Okay. You can come back and we can chat about that.
Hopefully the feds say yes to tolling I-80 sometime soon.
All right, that's it. Another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is history, and as always, you stay well.